I've always been curious about the appearance of the devil. The character played by George Clooney in the iconic movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, is well versed in demonology and the characteristics of Satan. Of course, Pete, there are a variety of smaller imps and demons, but the great Satan himself is scaly, red, and has two tails. The hay fork is in his hand. This is, in my opinion, the classic stereotypical image of Satan, red, scaly, and armed with a pitchfork, which is particularly well liked in cartoons and even made a fleeting appearance in Star Trek: The Next Generation. In comparison to the duration of Jewish and Christian history, this version of Satan is not only not very old, but it also does not originate from the Bible. It appears to be the result of a perplexing blending of Renaissance and medieval artistic traditions. The idea of Satan himself, the Christian idea that he is a fallen angel, the ruler of demons, the main temptation to sin, and, on the scale of cosmic history, the greatest enemy of God, is what I'm going to focus on in this video, rather than the history of this stereotypical depiction of Satan. It's crucial to remember that not even Christians share a common understanding of Satan. This usually depends on whether they see him as a real person or as a symbol of temptation and evil. Satan is typically viewed by Christians who do believe in him as a real person, as a fallen angel, a created being who disobeyed God and now commands other fallen angels known as demons. This conception of Satan is found in official Catholic doctrine and in the majority of Christian faiths, including the numerous Orthodox groups. In particular, Pope Francis frequently makes reference to Satan, stating that we shouldn't consider the devil to be a myth, a figure of speech, a symbol, a representation, or an idea. This error would cause us to become less vigilant. Regarding their views on Satan, Protestants are divided. While evangelicals tend to see Jesus as a genuine person, other religions choose to interpret him in a symbolic way. Furthermore, Satan is viewed by many Pentecostal Christians, whom academics occasionally classify under the heading of evangelicalism, as a genuine, active, and malicious menace who actively participates in continuing demonic combat. Naturally, I'm making generalizations about denominations here. Recall that there are internal differences across religions. There are Christians who have differing views on Satan, even within the same church or denomination. There is little survey data on Satanism, and some of it contradicts itself. However, according to a 2009 Barna survey, up to 40% of American Christians firmly believed that Satan is a symbol of evil rather than a live creature. Therefore, rejecting the existence of Satan is by no means a fringe viewpoint. But today, we'll be looking at the origins of the idea that Satan is God's arch-enemy and a true fallen angel. Satan has a past, as we shall see, and this idea changed over time. I will guide you along the rock-solid route. Let's begin with the Hebrew Bible and the ancient Israelite religion. The idea of a single, all-powerful, malevolent force that opposes God is entirely non-existent in the Hebrew Bible. In the early parts of the Hebrew Bible, the noun simply refers to human foes. However, the Hebrew word Satan does exist occasionally, generally translated as adversary or accuser. For instance, the Philistines used the same Hebrew term to describe King David as a possible enemy in 1 Samuel 29:4. However, the idea appears to develop into a divine professional title, similar to that of a prosecutor, in the Hebrew Bible's later writings. The Book of Job contains the most significant biblical allusion to this heavenly prosecutor. God rules over some kind of divine court or divine council of celestial beings in the first few chapters of Job. There is also a creature known as the Satan, or the accuser. However, as I already stated, the devil in this case is more of a job title than a moniker. In a divine court, the accuser manifests as a kind of opponent in the legal system. Interestingly, the Hebrew here uses a direct object identifier to refer to this Satan as the Satan, indicating that this is a specific recurring character. The goal of this supernatural opponent is to convict Job of wrongdoing against God and of being willing to abandon his faith. In the book of Zechariah, the devil also makes an appearance as a divine prosecutor, charging Joshua the high priest with a crime. Yahweh's angel essentially acts as the defendant's attorney. Observe how neither of these allusions reflects subsequent Christian ideas about Satan. In Job, the accuser or enemy is not a demon prince. He is neither an entirely malevolent enemy of God nor a fallen angel. In fact, it appears that he is a part of God's divine counsel. The fact that both of these references are found in works written during the Babylonian exile, however, is noteworthy. Many of the leaders of the Kingdom of Judah were exiled after the Babylonians sacked Jerusalem in 586 BCE, for those of you who are familiar with your ancient Israelite history. The Babylonians were permitted to return to Judea after they were vanquished by the Achaemenid Persian Empire. The Christian idea of Satan is nothing like anything that existed prior to the Babylonian exile. No particular enemy of God, no fallen angels ruling over other fallen angels. But according to researchers, something had to have occurred during this time that led to the conceptual shift from the lowercase Satan to the Satan, a particular recurrent enemy. And Zoroastrianism could have been that thing. Therefore, Judeans were under Persian rule in one way or another for 2 centuries, starting in 550 BCE, when the Jews returned from their exile in Babylon, and ending in 323 BCE, when Alexander the Great seized the area. The Achaemenid Persian Empire still included Judea. In light of the new religious concepts they were hearing from the Persians, particularly Zoroastrian concepts, academics hypothesized that the exiled Judean elite must have encountered Persian religious officials and created new theologies. Originating in ancient Iran, Zoroastrianism is a very old religion that is being practiced today. It teaches that Angra Mainyu, a holy evil creature, and Ahura Mazda, a divine being, are engaged in a never-ending conflict. There are now some issues with attempting to determine how Zoroastrianism influenced post-exile Judaism. There isn't much research on this topic because there are very few scholars who are knowledgeable about both Zoroastrian and Jewish apocalyptic writings. Although we should acknowledge that the term influence in this context is oversimplifying what was undoubtedly a very complex process of cultural exchange that occurred over centuries. Generally speaking, Iranian religious scholars such as Albert de Jong contend that we do see clear evidence of Zoroastrian influence in texts from the Second Temple period. The demon Asmodeus, the primary enemy of the Book of Tobit and a particularly evil demon, provides a clear, if surface-level illustration of this effect. The Zoroastrian character Ishmida, a lieutenant of Angra Mainyu, appears to have an etymological connection to the name Asmodeus, theorizing about a cosmic struggle between good and evil, more precisely, a struggle between a spiritual being of goodness and a spiritual being of evil, and texts that rhetorically connect these beings to light and dark is where we see more systematic influence in later Jewish texts. The Dead Sea Scrolls provide the most blatant illustration of Iranian influence. Several extra-biblical texts that present a kind of two spirits theology are preserved in these scrolls. One of the key documents in the corpus of Dead Sea Scrolls, the Community Rule, for instance, states that the God of Israel created the spirits of light and darkness and based all actions and deeds on their ways. All sin and evil are the result of this terrible angel. The Community Rule goes on to say that the angel of darkness misleads all of the children of righteousness, and that his reign is the source of all of their sins, transgressions, evils, and illegal acts. This evil spirit is referred to as Belial, an evil angel, who commands an army of other evil angels in the Community Rule and other Dead Sea Scrolls. Thus, hints of our well-known character Satan are beginning to appear. A final conflict between the sons of light and the sons of evil is depicted in another source, the War Scroll. The evil angel Belial leads the sons of darkness, whereas the archangel Michael leads the sons of light. Many academics believe that the harmony of good and evil, Michael and Belial, and light and dark, is unmistakable proof of Zoroastrian influence on certain Jewish sectarian organizations during the Second Temple era. According to some academics, these concepts are notably connected to a Zoroastrian sect known as the Zervanites. This group held the belief that the two spirits, Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu, were the offspring of a prime mover, or supreme entity, named Zervan, because it seems that the God of Israel still ruled over these two spirits of light and dark, according to the Dead Sea Scrolls. But it's not just the Dead Sea Scrolls. The idea of a uniquely malevolent celestial figure begins to emerge in even older apocalyptic writings, particularly in 1st Enoch. 1st Enoch is a significant extension of a story in Genesis about celestial creatures known as the children of God, wooing human women and producing the Nephilim, a term that may have originated from the Hebrew verb to fall. These were cunning angels who taught people a variety of wicked things, including astrology, magic, and warfare. The antagonist in charge of these angels is referred to by a number of names in the Book of Enoch, but it is not Satan or Belial. Shemihaza or Akael are confusing names for the main antagonist in the Book of the Watchers, the first part of Enoch. Michael, the archangel, opposes Shemihaza. The archangel Raphael opposes Osiel. But in another passage, the four archangels appear to link Shemihaza to Asiel and imply that God has granted him power. Asiel is the first to fall in the so-called dream vision, another part of 1st Enoch, where the angels are depicted as stars. Thus, the concept of malevolent angels literally plummeting from the sky is presented here. Although it doesn't seem to be a distinct name, the word Satan does appear in 1st Enoch. The term Satans is used in one section to refer to fallen angels. Enoch claims to have heard an archangel's voice chasing the devils away. Scholars argue over whether we should translate Satan as the adversary rather than as a specific name because it appears in other verses as a singular proper noun. Another apocalyptic book that builds on the Book of Genesis is the Book of Jubilees, where this appears to be the case. Mastema, who is introduced in Jubilees, is portrayed as the demon commander and is known as the Satan. Once more, though, this is more of a title than a true name, and it seems to be more akin to the role of the Satan in Job as an accuser or tester. In summary, the Second Temple apocalyptic literature frequently feature a wicked leader of fallen angels or bad spirits in general, such as Shemihaza, Asael, Belial, Mastema, or the Satan. The early Jesus movement arose from this cultural setting. Let's go on to the New Testament now. The name Belial is uncommon in the New Testament, in contrast to the Dead Sea Scrolls. Generally speaking, the New Testament refers to God's main enemy by the word Satan, or the Greek word diabolos, which is a direct translation of the Hebrew word Satan and the root of English words like diabolic and devil. The Apostle Paul uses the term Belial to refer to the evil opposite of Christ. In the New Testament, Satan still serves as some kind of tester or prosecutor. He tempts people to sin, such as when he persuades Judas Iscariot to betray Jesus, and he also tests Jesus in the wilderness. Satan is sometimes referred to be the Archon, or king of the demons, and it appears that other early Christians also believed that he had the ability to bring about disease and death. All of these attributions, however, come from the same theological schools of thought that we witness in 1st Enoch's Asel, the Dead Sea Scrolls Belial, and the Book of Jubilees Mastema, rather than the Hebrew Bible, as we have seen throughout this video. The idea that the snake that tempted Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden must be Satan, or that an oracle in the book of Isaiah condemning the Babylonian king alludes to the beginnings of Satan himself, are examples of how Christians historically interpret stories in the Hebrew Bible through the prism of this New Testament representation of Satan. Weeping, the prophet says, "How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn." The Latin Vulgate versions of the Bible use the word Lucifer to allude to Satan. However, this word, day star or morning star, actually refers to the planet Venus. Here, however, the prophet is speaking about a king on earth. The purpose of this film was to encourage us to reflect historically, not to refute Christian dogma. The 5 C's of historical thinking, a framework for how we as history students should approach historical events, ideas or figures, were taught to me while I was a history major in college, before I ventured into religious studies. Change across time, context, causation, complexity, and contingency are the 5 C's. We should check ourselves and remind ourselves that things change over time, even if a moniker like Satan exists in a 6th century literature, like Job, and a 1st century CE record, like the Gospel of Matthew. Change over time is not complicated. There is a half-millennium between these 2 manuscripts, and the idea of Satan most likely evolved in that time. The 2nd C, context, serves as a reminder that ideas such as Satan developed inside a complex web of political, cultural, and social factors. Satan appears to have developed inside the framework of the Achaemenid Persian realm, and subsequently Alexander the Great's Hellenized realm. Therefore, when examining Satan, we need consider the circumstances of these 2 historical and cultural contexts. Next are complexity and causality. According to historians Thomas Andrews and Flannery Burke, scientists can repeat experiments repeatedly to determine cause and effect, which makes determining causality challenging. However, historians cannot actually rerun their experiments to determine what caused what impact, because the past has already occurred. Although we can't truly pinpoint the exact cause and effect, we can say that Zoroastrianism had an impact on Satan's development. Who was the first Zoroastrian priest to discuss the nature of good and evil with an exiled Israelite? That kind of information is not available to us. Therefore, we must use logic and probability, based on the analysis of primary source materials, to determine causality. Then there is complication. Complexity serves as a reminder that there are many variables involved in anything. Since reality is always messier and more complex than that, it would be far too simplistic to claim that Zoroastrianism gave rise to the idea of Satan. Last but not least, contingency, possibly the most challenging idea in the 5C framework, makes the case that history is contingent. It asserts that any historical result is dependent on several antecedents. This serves as a reminder of how interconnected everything is. The kingdom of Judah was overrun by the Babylonians, who then exiled the people. The Judeans were then permitted to return once the Achaemenids overthrew the Babylonians. It is a series of contingent events that result from earlier circumstances, and altering even one of those earlier circumstances could have produced an entirely different future. The historical fallacy of teleology, which holds that history is moving in a certain direction, is countered by contingency. Early in the 20th century, it was popular for historians to write teleological histories of Christianity, which held that the contemporary form of Christianity was destined to replace the ancient pagan religion of the Roman Empire as a new religion, perhaps a different branch of Christianity, such as the one that saw the snake in the Garden of Eden as the good guy would have taken over if we had altered any one of the conditions in this series of contingent occurrences. Therefore, keep in mind to use the 5C framework to aid in our historical thinking when we tackle any idea in any religion.